Hey guys, Dr. Witt here. We're moving on to week 5 content. In week 5, the theme is going to be exercise prescription for muscular fitness and also with an emphasis on looking at women's health. This is a very, how do you say it, important and unique topic to look at because in today's culture, most of your clients, like for those of you that are going into like general health, health and fitness with general population, you're gonna be working with a high percentage of female clientele. I've worked as a personal trainer for a number of years, and especially in the first probably 2 or 3 years that I worked, most of my clients were female. And typically the reason for that is they're looking for expert help, especially with unique situations. I've had a few female clients over the years that were pregnant. In fact, I worked with one client who was pregnant and basically worked out with me all the way from, before she was pregnant, she was my client all the way through to like basically the last trimester. In fact, she was working out with me up until the week before she had the child. So there's a safe and effective way to prescribe exercise and work with pregnant women and any other female population that has specific needs. So this is a really good chapter to look at, especially for those of you that are going into personal training, or maybe you're doing that now. You probably have some experience with this. Hopefully, you can take a little bit more away from this week. So, just a quick overview on what we're going to be doing. The first thing is the chapter reading. Chapter 13, you need to read that chapter first. That is on exercise prescription for muscular fitness. So I'm going to be going over the basic concepts of muscular fitness there. This is going to be a review of basically your undergrad experience if you did like an exercise science type of degree. But then chapter 18 goes into exercise with an emphasis on women's health. And then your tasks for this week are quiz 5. Just like every other week, you have a quiz that's due on Sunday. And then the homework assignment this week is a reflection. So last week was a cap 2. This week we're on reflection 3, which is the second case study. Your first case study was looking at an elderly individual and assessing flexibility and design a flexibility program for him. This week, going with the theme of women's health, you're going to be working with a pregnant client, and she has some specific needs. If you scroll down on Blackboard, I'm looking at Blackboard right now, you can see under the case study there's a scenario. It talks about the scenario. She's in her late 20s, she's pregnant, she needs fitness advice, so on and so forth. Your goal is to look at each part. So part 1, 2, and 3. Part 1 is looking at the FIT principles from the ACSM. Part 2 is designing and laying out that FIT template to design a workout program for this individual. And then number 3 is once you've designed the template, include the exercises and considerations and so forth. So your posts, remember this is a forum post, it's a reflection. You need to have this put together by Thursday and post it in the forum or sooner if you can. And then engage in at least 2 classmates' posts in the forum by Sunday. Okay, I will be looking for those in the forum, and I will be responding to some of your posts periodically throughout the week as you post them. Be sure that you record the video and follow the video guidelines. Those video recording guidelines or requirements are up there just as well, just like every other week. And try and keep your video to no more than 6 minutes. So keep it short and sweet, okay? All right, I think that just about covers everything for the week. I'm going to go ahead and hop into just some highlights of the PowerPoint topics that are posted for the chapter reading. So for chapter 13, looking at exercise prescription for muscular fitness, the basics here are you need to review the principles of training, look at what considerations go into designing programs for individuals. the different types and modes of resistance training that are involved. There's so many different ways that you can train. Now, types versus modes, looking at like, okay, the mode is like, what are you doing? So a type could be aerobic versus anaerobic. The mode would be like specifically, what is it? If it's aerobic, are you running, walking, jogging, cycling, rowing, swimming, and so forth? If it's anaerobic, are you doing plyometric work? Are you doing, typically it's a form of resistance training. Is it, weights, barbells, dumbbells, free weights versus machine versus bands, and so forth. There's some safety issues that are reviewed in the chapter, and then resistance training guidelines and systems, along with special populations, of course, because that's what this course is all about, which will be touched on at the end. Some of the basics that I want to just kind of go over with you quickly on this. The traditional approach to resistance training, what most people go into thinking is, I want to be better at a sport or perform better, and I want to get bigger muscles, okay? So that's the traditional approach. But really, the goal is to enhance our health and fitness, parameters, as it's stated in the text, to help train people and become healthier. And so what does that involve? One is the use of glucose metabolism, so glucose in the muscles. Basically, the uptake of glucose through the use of normal function of insulin release, and uptake in the muscles, and burning the glucose for energy. And then the second thing is thinking of body composition. So BMI, body fat versus lean muscle tissue. The goal is to lower body fat and increase lean muscle tissue, because that's healthier for us. It's healthy for our body. And so that's one of the primary focuses is, okay, can we reduce overweight syndrome, right, or obesity? And then, of course, with that, there's the risk of hypertension and any cardiovascular diseases, so CVD, and metabolic syndromes, okay? So those are the key approaches to resistance training. A lot of people think, oh, I want to lose weight, I need to run, or I need to do cardio. Cardio helps, it absolutely does, but even as a marathon runner, cardio is not everything. You need to have resistance training in your training, your weekly exercise. Even in the peak of my training, when I'm running like 90 to 100 miles a week, I'm still hitting the weights 3 to 4 times a week. Lately, more often, just because now I have a home gym. But it's important to do resistance training. It's good for your for building muscles, maintaining strength, and enhancing your metabolism, right? So I'm going to kind of skip over the terminology. It just goes over like muscular strength versus power versus fitness versus endurance training. That should be pretty typical review for you. Some of the key terms to take a look at are the principles of training. So we have progression, right? So how do we progress the body? Regularity, so how often are we lifting? The overload principle, and then specificity. Take a look at those two specifically. Overload is the concept of you have to challenge the body and push it further each time. You can't just do the same thing over and over and over again, because eventually the body will plateau and then quit progressing. So in order to progress, you have to introduce overload. And then specificity is basically it's a SAID acronym, specific adaptations to impose demands. The goal is to be specific to what you want to improve. Okay. All right, so that's some of the highlights on chapter 13. I'll let you go through and read all the nitty gritty, and I don't know. I reviewed the chapter a couple days ago, and it's always good to look at this and just have a reminder of, no matter what level of education you have or experience you have training clients, it's just a good refresher to look at that. Okay. All right. So last chapter is chapter 18. So if you want to pull that up. This is exercise in women's health. So the overview on this is four main things we're going to look at. First, which is key to your reflections. So for your reflection case study, you should look at this chapter and take notes of it. Exercise during pregnancy. So what are the recommendations? What are the limitations? What are the things that you should keep in mind when working with a pregnant exerciser? Okay. Osteoporosis is a concern in women. So lower bone density, loss of bone mass is a concern, especially in older women. And so that's something to take in consideration when you're designing a training program. Even with pregnant women, you should think about load, and backing off the progression and overload principles and being more specific to the needs of the individual. I typically would go with the use of resistance bands and lighter weights, and back off of plyometrics, or the volume of plyometrics exercises. So that's just a good approach to take, and just steadily build. Okay, progression might not take off as quickly as you would, working with a healthier, more athletic individual. So it's a good thing to keep in mind. And then, of course, with osteoporosis, there is some guidelines on exercise prescription for increasing bone health, and how to progress through that. And then the last thing that's talked about in this chapter is the female athlete triad. So what does that involve? I'll actually scroll down to that section, and basically the athlete triad is focusing on so three things. The first thing is energy availability is what it states on here. So oftentimes with female athletes, and especially the younger age, they don't eat enough, right? And so a lot of that is the idea of, if I eat too much, I'm going to gain weight. And so they're almost anorexic or bulimic to some degree. So not taking in enough energy, but using too much. So they're in a negative zone. Then bone health starts to decrease. Estrogen deficiency can occur, which can eventually lead to osteoporosis. And then the third thing is the menstrual status. If they lose too much body weight, they could become basically they stop having their monthly period, and they become I'm losing the term, postmenopausal. Okay, so premenopausal versus post. So the idea is basically, if a female athlete loses too much weight, is not taking enough energy, there's a risk of osteoporosis that can occur, and eating disorders along the way. And then they'll stop having their regular menstrual cycles, which is not healthy. So something to look at. There's a little female athlete triad, what do you call it, teeter-totter looking thing, that kind of gives you an idea of, good health versus compromised health, and what the goals are with that. Okay. All right. Hopefully I explained that in a way that you understood. I'm sure you're well aware of this concern with female exercisers and some of the parameters that you need to pay attention to. But it's good to touch up on this reading. All right. As always, if you have any questions about the chapter materials or anything that's going on this week, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm only a click away. All right. Love you all. Have a blessed week. Bye.